Alright, well, hello there. Here is a quick video just to show you how to get your Arduino programmed to work with LabVIEW using the linx firmware. You should only have to do this once unless you reprogram your Arduino for other things between labs. Once the program's in there, it runs the most recent program over and over. So it's easy to change if you want to play with it, but once you do this, if you don't reprogram it, you shouldn't have to reprogram it. So the first thing to do is to plug your Arduino into your computer, into the USB, and you want to make sure that it gets recognized. If you don't have the proper USB drivers, then it will come up and not work, and you can't do anything. So this is the if it doesn't get recognized, you have to fix that before you can do any of the rest of the lab. So on Windows, we can open up the device manager. So I click on the start window and I just type, it's buried in the menus, but if you start typing device manager, it will show up. And I'll bring it over to the screen capture. And this is what, these are all the hardware things on my Windows computer. Macs have a similar thing, but I don't know how to do it. Macs, you can look at the dev folder maybe if it's like Linux. So it will show up when it's plugged in as a COM port, communication port, serial port. And you can see I have one hardware port on my motherboard, and I have the Bluetooth module has some Bluetooth ports already installed, but no Arduino. So when I plug the Arduino in, USB and Arduino. If you heard that, bing gada bing, and here it shows up as COM5. That's success. If it fails, if you plug an unknown device in there that doesn't have a driver, it may install the driver for you. That would be really nice. Otherwise, it will show up somewhere in this list, either under other devices or here if it recognizes it's a COM port but can't use it, with an exclamation point. So if you have anything that have exclamation points in their description, that means they're not really working. You can look at properties and things to make sure it's working. So if you get that, then you're good. If you don't, then you probably need to install the drivers. Or you could have a bad USB cable. The one that I got with my kit only worked if I wiggled it just right. Hopefully nobody else got a bad one like that. And then you have to remember the number. I just unplugged mine. I'm going to plug a different one in. This one's red. And you'll see the first one came up as COM5, and this one comes up as COM10. So you'll need to remember what number it is. And if you can't remember, you can look in the device manager every time. So anytime your Arduino's not communicating, if you get serial errors, it's probably this. There's a little USB chip right here on the board, and that is doing all the communication to the main chip, the big chip here. And it's possible that this chip can crash, especially if you happen to touch or drag your multimeter probes somewhere on these little pins. And if that hangs, that chip hangs, this might be running, but you won't get any communication as well. And the way you reset that is you unplug it and plug it back in. So anytime communication errors, try unplugging and plugging it back in again. All right, so once we have our COM port established, then we need to put the firmware in, and that's simply done with LabView. So you can open up LabView. You can get to this tools menu from a VI or from this splash screen, and you want to go down to the Maker Hub, linx, firmware wizard, click on that, and it looks like this. And so we just have to tell it what kind of an Arduino. So we have the Arduino Uno. We're using serial USB. That's all right, and it's an Arduino. So I can click next. Then I have to pick the serial port that I had. So hopefully you'll remember. It's usually the biggest number. because those are the more recent the driver was installed, the bigger the number typically. So if you have to guess the largest number. Click Next. Then we take these defaults. We're using this firmware, and we're using the pre-built firmware. And we can click Next. And then this should go, you should see blinking lights while it's communicating over the serial port. And then it's done, and that worked. If you want to launch the example, it's kind of fun. It's a VI that comes with it, and it's a quick test. You have to tell it the serial port again, so it knows where your Arduino is. You can use digital output 13, and it's going to, because on Arduino Uno's pin 13, there are many different outputs. I'll show you on the drawing in a second. Pin 13 has an LED already wired up, so that's the one that you can see. And then you can click Start. And then if you turn the LED on, the LED turns on. Turn the LED off. Oh, it turned off. Couldn't tell. So on, off, on, off. And if you get that, then you're in really good shape to do the lab. That's the basic hardware test. So once you've done that, you should just be able to plug this in and run your linx-based VIs anytime. So we've got the firmware in here that LabView talks over the USB to the Arduino, and it can use it as a voltmeter and other input devices. All right, so I will stop there in case you want to watch these in series, and the next one we'll talk about how to make the LabView VI.